haven't. Hasn't Annie been in touch with Carney?
England.
No, I tried to raise him once about 9:15, but couldn't get through. That's the only effort I made.
The fifth plenary meeting of Habitat United Nations Conference on Human Settlements is called to order. We shall now continue the general debate. The first speaker this morning is the Minister of Municipal and Rural Affairs of Saudi Arabia, His Royal Highness Prince Majid ibn Abdul Aziz Al Saud. I invite him to come to the rostrum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
In the name of the Almighty God, the Most Merciful, it gives the delegation of Saudi Arabia the pleasure to extend warmest thanks to the Canadian government for hosting this conference and for the hospitality received in this country. We also wish to extend our thanks to the General Secretary and his assistants for the efforts deployed in preparing for this historic conference, and for which we wish great success. This international conference is but a clear expression of the desire of the world community to work for the good of human settlements and provide settlers with the adequate public services and amenities. It gives the Saudi Arabian delegation a pleasure participating with other delegates, other countries, in presenting some experience of our country in that field of human settlements, which may differ from that of other countries. The experience of Saudi Arabia in the field of human settlements began at the beginning of this century, when His Majesty, the late King Abdulaziz, established in 1912 over 110 agricultural settlements for the nomads in different regions of Saudi Arabia. The objective of this project was to settle down the nomads, raise their standard of living, and provide them with the necessary services. Our recent experience in this field is presented by the project that the late King Faisal established for settling down the nomads in the eastern region of the country. At the present time, Saudi Arabia is passing through a transitional period of economic development, which is balanced with the human values rooted in the doctrine of Islam, considered as the constitution of Saudi Arabia. The speed of urbanization and migration to cities had left its distinct mark in the structure of Saudi settlement. Saudi Arabia is launching immediate programs for solving the problems that have the aim of the most efficient and rapid urbanization. It is most pertinent to find immediate solutions as well as drafting long-term plans. This action is more adequate for the transitional period of which the country is passing through as a developing nation. The preservation of human values, high ideals, and true Arab traditions too have been always taken into consideration My government tries to bring about a balance between the developments of rural and urban areas by settling nomads in new agricultural settlements and decreasing the migration from rural areas to urban settlements, as well as raising the agricultural production and provision of public services in the rural areas. While the Ministry of Rural and Urban Affairs provides the public services, the Ministry of Labor and Social Affairs helps to the developing of social aspects by encouraging local citizens to participate in their local affairs in order to raise their standard of living. On the other hand, the Ministry of Public Works and Housing provides the adequate number of housing projects and that to face the housing problems in Saudi towns through a number of housing projects aiming at building 150,000 units during the second five-year plan. Together with the Ministry of Municipal and Rural Affairs provides the land required for these housing projects, together with the necessary services in all the cities of Saudi Arabia. The private sector contributes and is expected to contribute and will build about 120,000 housing units during the same period. The government has established a real estate bank to provide loans for the private sector, extending loans up to 70% of the cost of the construction with no interest. Side by side with that, the Saudi Arabian government has drawn a long-term development program policy in this area. It is intended to build several rural centers in areas of economic potentialities in order to comprise educational, medical, and administrative services applied to all the areas. Thus, the government pays great attention to the development of water resources in the country. The government was, through its experience in the field in regard to human settlements, to establish a new methodology in urban development suitable to its socio-economic and physical characteristics and based on the continuous integration of the economic and social development programs. Emphasis has been given to the physical planning machinery with the development of local manpower, which can proceed with planning to follow up and supervision in continuous manner. Saudi Arabia has drawn up plans for 25 main cities, and these plans will soon be materialized socially and economic. Mr. President, the government of Saudi Arabia, through its very experience and through the development of human settlements, has been able to lay down the plan which would be in harmony with the social and economic conditions. I wish to reconfirm that the urban planning and rural planning and the development of human settlements, which are being already taken into consideration in our overall plan. This is a small survey of our activities in the field of human settlements, and we hope that our participation and our modest contribution at this conference will add to the knowledge of conferees and that we in turn will make use of their experience. The exchange of experience at this conference will continue and will only continue if the activities in this field are organized and will be in a way which would help developing countries and to confront their own problems in the field of human settlements. Mr. President,
Thank you.
before I conclude my presentation, I should like to refer to the fact that the efforts of my government are not limited only to its own country, but have been extended to other countries, helping the development of similar projects as part of the duties of our country towards the international society. Saudi Arabia will continue to be true to its noble message and plan and seek the well-being and happiness of mankind without any discrimination, segregation, or violence. On this occasion, I wish to draw the attention of my fellow delegates to the resolutions of the Regional Conference condemning the racial discrimination and violent decisions and steps which have led to the expulsion of the citizens in their own country and preventing them from living in their own homeland. I would like to draw also the attention of this distinguished conference in the resolutions of the Preparatory Committee held in Tehran, that this conference is against all kinds of immigration, the expropriation of land by any authority, an occupying authority, and making the citizens homeless and destroying their homes, and the just solution to the people of Palestine from whom its legitimate rights have been usurped, and the human settlements will call for their return to their homeland and the right to play their role. This is indeed a basic necessity to bring about peace and justice in this world. Thank you very much for your attention.
I wish to thank the Minister.
أود أن أشكر السيد وزير الشؤون البلدية والقروية بالمملكة العربية السعودية، وأعطي الكلمة لوزير البيئة بالنرويج سعادة جرو هالم روندلاند.
Mr. President,
سيد الرئيس، خلال السنوات القليلة الماضية عقد عدد من المؤتمرات العالمية تحت إشراف الأمم المتحدة، وبالرغم من أن هذه الاجتماعات الدولية قد تناولت عدد من المشكلات المختلفة في مجال الحياة البشرية، فإن الموضوع الموحد هو الإدراك المتزايد بأن هذه المشكلات الاجتماعية والاقتصادية التي تواجهها العالم لا يمكن التغلب عليها إلا بالعمل المخطط والمنسق عن طريق التعاون والتضامن الدولي. إن إعادة الكرامة الإنسانية وتحقيق الاحتياجات الإنسانية الأساسية والتطلعات الإنسانية يعتمد على درجة قدرتنا ورغبتنا في تنسيق جهودنا وتجميع خبراتنا ومواردنا. إن المهمة الأساسية لهذا المؤتمر بعلاقته الوثيقة بمؤتمر ستوكهولم الخاص بالبيئة البشرية هو وضع الأساس للجهود القومية المناسبة اللازمة لمواجهة مشكلات المستوطنات البشرية وتجميع الجهود الدولية في برنامج دولي منسق. إن مشكلات المستوطنات البشرية ترتبط بضغط النمو السكاني والمشكلات البيئية والهياكل الاجتماعية غير المناسبة، وكذلك الرعاية الصحية والتعليمية، وكذلك بالتوزيع غير العادل للموارد فيما يتعلق بالدخل والثروة. إن هذه المشكلات لا يمكن فصلها عن بعضها البعض، ولكنها تعد جزءا من المشكلات الاجتماعية والاقتصادية والبيئية. كما أود أن أؤكد الحاجة إلى زيادة الجهود والحلول الأفضل في مجال التغلب على
the life situation for women and men by securing these fundamental individual rights. The provision of adequate shelter and a satisfactory natural and living environment and employment opportunities for all, women and men, is not only a question of resources, but also one of comprehensive economic planning, direction and control. However, this cannot be accomplished without a redistribution of resources in favor of the least privileged groups nationally and the least privileged nations internationally. The themes of this conference are therefore also closely linked with the themes of the 7th special session of the United Nations General Assembly and the 4th session of the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, which has just terminated in Nairobi. As has been stated by the Norwegian government at these conferences, we regard it as a priority task to assist the developing nations through trade policy measures and through transfer of resources that will stimulate their productive capacity. As regards my own country, we will reach the 1% of the gross national product target on a grant basis for official development aid in 1978, and Parliament has recently given its consent in principle to go beyond the 1% target in the years after. A basic element of Norway's bilateral development cooperation is that Norwegian assistance should be integrated in the development plans of our partner countries. Norway is therefore ready to consider bilateral assistance for solving human settlement problems when a main partner country has included it in its development plans and requests Norwegian assistance for this purpose. A secure standard of living, a secure job, and a good living environment are important prerequisites for human self-realization and welfare. In addition, the quality of the working environment, the opportunity to participate in decision-making, access to unspoiled nature, and other non-purchasable goods are essential for human welfare. Increased availability of food, clothing, housing, energy, transportation, health care, education, and other goods and services are necessary to improve the standard of living of the unprivileged sections of mankind. Economic growth and development on a global scale is therefore vitally important. However, growth is only meaningful insofar as it really contributes to increased welfare and improved quality of life. Thus, the growth process has to be planned and directed in order to fulfill social objectives. It is an important task to obtain a more balanced economic, social, and environmental development, including a more even and just distribution of social and economic resources. Employment opportunities for women and men, as well as a better working environment, must be given high priority. Increased attention should be given to attain a better balance between housing and employment opportunities, both in larger and smaller communities. Migration and other undesirable readjustments have to be reduced through a decentralization of economic, social, and cultural activities. Active planning and implementation by public authorities are indispensable to achieve greater equality of living conditions between individuals, population groups, and regions. The same is needed to solve the problems of resource utilization, pollution, urbanization, and social disadvantages. In order to ensure a development adapted to local conditions and needs, decision-making should be decentralized as far as possible. We believe that each nation should carefully examine their present division of functions between different levels of government. Such an examination is now underway in Norway, and the regional level will gradually grow in importance. Planning is an important issue at this conference. In most countries, a continuous expansion and refinement of public planning has taken place at all levels. Expansion of sectoral planning has, however, made the development of a comprehensive overview of separate sectors and their interrelationships even more essential, but also more complex. To enable planning at all levels of government to serve as a practical tool in directing the use of resources and the development of regions, the following guidelines have been adopted in my country. Political governing bodies at the local, regional, and national level are responsible for planning and management of physical and economic resources, including land use. A clear division of function is to be made between the various levels of government. Laws and regulations related to planning will be coordinated and simplified. Decisions regarding resources, their use, protection, and development should be based on coordinated planning, which includes long-term goals for resource management and regional development. Regional policy in Norway aims first of all at furthering the kind of development in the different parts of the country which best provide for human well-being. This means that the whole population must, to the extent possible, be given equal access to social and cultural amenities, meaningful and well-paid employment, and a reasonably wide choice of jobs. Housing is for several reasons an important element in this context. The home and the local environment is basic to an individual's well-being and capacity to play an active part as a member of society. This is the main consideration underlying the Norwegian housing policy. There has been a tendency to regard investment in housing as non-productive because dwellings do not directly increase the amount of goods and services that can be marketed. The Secretary General of Habitat has rightly pointed to the role construction can play in national development strategies. Construction and improvement of human settlements could more widely become a leading sector in national economies, since a high and stable level of activity in the construction sector constitute a stimulating and stabilizing element in the economy. This is our own experience in Norway. Our policy has been to maintain investment in dwellings and infrastructure at a high level also at times when we have been affected by economic recession. The main reason is the importance of adequate housing as a key element in our social development policy. This policy has undoubtedly been beneficial also for the economy as a whole. Improvement of human settlements can to a great extent be built on inputs that are available locally or nationally. We believe that the Secretary General is right when pointing to the unique position of construction and housing industries in this regard. This is one of the reasons for an optimistic assessment of the possibilities for solving one of the main problems facing the world today. Mr. President, Habitat's foremost task is to secure adequate recognition of the role of human settlements as part of a deliberate national and international strategy. We must influence development policies and the national priorities to improve the standard and quality of life for the poor sections of humanity. The general principles and guidelines which we will approve must be followed up by concrete action nationally and internationally. This is a serious challenge to all of us, representatives of governments of the world. Only decisions that can be translated into the realities of the daily life of the unprivileged are real contributions to development and a better life for the most deprived sections of mankind. This recognition should be our guide and inspiration for the work of this conference. Given the excellent preparatory work done and the sense of urgency that should direct us, we should not fail in this task. Thank you, Mr. President. Capsule, please.
Okay, Mobile, we won't use you for your opening.
Norway comprises the western half of the Scandinavian peninsula in the extreme north of Europe. It's a land of fjords and mountains, deep valleys and wide stretches of treeless moorland. It's a big country, covering an area of about 130,000 square miles, but at the same time a small country with a population of only 4 million. Climate and topography vary greatly from one part of the country to the other. So do population density and economic structure. In a world of keen competition, outlying districts are apt to take second place. For this reason, the Norwegian government considers it a prime task to redress the balance and ensure that every region has the same right to economic, social and cultural development. This can only be achieved by coordinated effort locally, regionally and centrally. This applies not least to the financing of the various projects set on foot. Planning and better and more varied jobs will prevent a flight from the land to towns and built-up areas. When this happens, there is a complete change in the pattern and way of life. And at the same time, rural communities become depopulated and unproductive. What was missing was a proper system of communication and a satisfactory economic basis. This picture shows a community in West Norway 10 years ago. Choice of employment was limited and there was grave danger of depopulation. In fact, the flight from the land had already started. And this is what it looks like now. Regional development has turned it into a viable community, and the population, in fact, is on the increase. There are now new and better chances of employment. There are more people at work. The standard of living and job satisfaction have risen. One effective measure is the building and leasing of industrial premises by the government. Another is a fund set up to provide firms with favorable loans and investment grants. With these incentives, firms find it profitable to establish themselves outside the pressure areas. To ensure favorable local adjustment, the government has delegated a wide measure of authority to regional and municipal organs. The aim is to create a good population pattern wherever a sound economic basis exists. This is a question of resources, priorities, and economic control. If the problem of human settlements is to be solved, it will be necessary to distribute resources to the benefit of the least privileged countries, and within each country to the least privileged population groups.
I thank the Minister of Environment of Norway, and as we are have been in an experimental stage with the use of the audiovisuals, the simple words "capsule please" or "capsule now" has assisted in this case and shown how quickly the capsule can come on and helps the technicians who are working with the system. Under Rule 54, I invite the President of the Inter-American Development Bank, Mr. Antonio Ortiz Mena, to speak.
Señor Presidente, señores
Mr. President, distinguished delegates, the United Nations have once again convened us to analyze possible solutions to a problem which affects all mankind, the industrial centers of the world as well as the developing countries. While the questions we shall be dealing with at this conference are common for all peoples, the impact is different. It is significantly greater in the poorer countries which have less resources to meet immediate needs. The underdeveloped countries whose fundamental objective is economic and social growth have in the last decade acquired a painful awareness of the human settlements, because progress alone does not seem to be a sufficient remedy to alleviate those ills, and because the resources available are insufficient to solve all the needs and problems and also to maintain an adequate rate of development. Of all the items which the United Nations have analyzed in this second development decade, perhaps none is more complex than that of the human environment, because through it the values of peoples and their social organization are expressed. And to alter human settlements involves basically a profound transformation. First of all, I as a Latin American must ask myself whether the experience of our region has experiences that can be useful for other developing countries. In the complete text, which has been distributed to participants, there is a prognosis of the urban crisis in Latin America and the semi-development of the region, and these are dilemmas of countries which have ceased to be predominantly agricultural, but which have not yet become industrialized nations. I need hardly say that in this state of transition, the old problems are added to the new, created by industrialization itself. I should like to draw attention to some general questions which affect this dilemma. Firstly, we must clearly bear in mind that many problems are derived from the insufficient development of countries, so that it would be mistaken to think of solving them by raising industrialization rates. On the contrary, what is needed now is to accelerate technological and industrial progress in the region itself. There is also the widespread idea that some of the undesirable consequences of progress are inherent in the nature of modern technology. I believe that the use which human beings make of technology determines the nature of the consequences and not the reverse. Finally, it must be understood that while the dynamism of development as a rule starts with acute imbalances in the economic organization and social structure, they are the governing and creative responses of human beings which convert crises and imbalances in better opportunities and a better quality of life. The crisis of the cities in Latin America proves that these solutions have so far been insufficient to have the necessary impact on the urban situation, and for success we need strategies and approaches which more closely bear on the main causes. We have reached a situation in the evolution of the crisis of the cities, the outcome of which will depend on the application of policies which reflect new concepts of development. Several opportunities, representatives of governments of the region have met to try to find concrete solutions. It is interesting to consider some of them, particularly when they express a slow but sure and growing consensus. I would venture to say that the bases have already been laid to give impetus to a new strategy based on specific policies in 7 major decision areas which have a direct or indirect impact on urban development. The need to regulate population growth is one of them. After overcoming the initial ideological obstacles and within the system of values of Latin American culture, governments of the region have concluded that the main delimitations for obtaining birth control is the poverty of the social services, particularly in regard to public health and education. It has been pointed out insistently that the geographical location of the population also requires government decisions which will attenuate the trend to an excessive concentration of the population in a few cities. Unless basic policies are adopted to influence internal migration, it is likely that planning measures will have only a marginal effect. I am convinced that we're coming close to a historical phase which will be characterized by the economic conquest of the interior of countries. What we have done in this century is to create incentives to concentrate the population, and along the way we have brought to the cities the poverty of the rural areas. Now we must make a major effort for a more balanced spread of technological progress and its benefits. A third aspect of growing concern is the need to regulate the prices of urban land. The excessive rise in price in the last decades has become an almost insuperable barrier for bringing order into the growth of cities. Legislative measures are urgent, as well as taxes, setting up reserves and support for financing systems which will facilitate control of the real estate market. Cities will not be able to survive as centers of civilization and culture unless a major effort is made to eradicate poverty. This means expanding the economic base of cities, broadening the offer of remunerative jobs, and making it possible for persons to use their skills. The policy employment must be one of the key factors in policy and planning. A fifth aspect which requires urgent attention is providing services and housing. The strategies adopted in the last decade have significantly raised the number of dwellings built, but have not been able to meet the needs of the most deprived groups. To this end, new approaches are required, which are less rigid and also more dynamic. Housing must be only a part of a package of services to integrate the marginal families in the economic and social life of cities. The political decision taken in the last decades to set up a major urban base of landowners to meet the demands of the middle class and industrial workers must be supplemented with other policies which will consider the condition of groups whose savings and productivity status is precarious, and measures must be taken to improve their salaries. There must be a national housing policy to define objectives on the basis of the volume and nature of the needs of the regions and the various social sectors, considering in particular assistance to those groups which are still not able to become owners, but with support at present could in the future benefit from financing programs to acquire their own housing. In this very complex field, it is essential to recognize some facts of life. Just as environmental protection is the initial basis for any health program with lasting effects, cleanliness in housing is also the cornerstone for other complementary policies to eradicate the alienation in the urban scene. We believe that a new approach to the problem should include leasing of public housing, including services, which will contribute to the economic and social integration of the beneficiaries, and in other cases, providing lots with services and eliminating slums, and a series of programs for the users of the dwellings. A sixth point is the transport crisis in cities, which in the last years has become extreme and requires the adoption of major decisions. Beyond congestion, which is the most visible aspect of the problem, we begin to perceive economic realities which cannot be ignored. Obviously, we have reached a situation where we must make a choice in favor of collective transport and establish measures to limit private individual transport within cities. These are prior measures to be supplemented with long-term measures. No doubt the problem of transportation is a function of urban planning and also of the selection of appropriate technologies. Finally, it is essential to strengthen urban institutions which oversee the disorderly growth of our Latin American cities. The systems of administration and of urban government which predominate in Latin America are particularly unsuitable to be in charge of the complex responsibility of guiding the transportation of cities. The weakness of local government gives rise to a vacuum in authority in strategic areas where the lack of appropriate decisions makes possible the proliferation of chaos. Our commitment to act in these fields should constitute the framework for a new strategy for development. The institution over which I preside will make every effort to cooperate with governments in seeking solutions to these grave problems. To transform this challenge into a creative solution is an unavoidable responsibility of national and international institutions. I most sincerely hope that this important conference will be a success. Thank you.
I wish to thank the President of the Inter-American Development Bank. The next speaker is the Federal Minister of Regional Planning, Building and Urban Development of the Federal Republic of Germany, His Excellency Mr. Karl Ravens. I give him the floor now.
Mr. President, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. You, Mr. President, asked yesterday to no longer express congratulations, but I'm sure you'll permit that I say thank you to all of those who were working so hard to prepare this conference. This conference is trying to find solutions of how the problem of shaping and developing our towns and communities so that people can live and secure a dignified life within their boundaries. This is a profoundly humane task, and therefore it is only natural, even necessary, I believe, that the United Nations have turned to this subject. Our discussion this is so complex as it is, and we should therefore try and make every effort and concentrate on this issue. Our discussion on human settlements cannot end where we are talking only about settlements built by man. It has to be continued and find its climax in those fields where we are dealing with settlements for men, where we are dealing with an environment which has been made worthier for the human race. We are firmly convinced that this call for humanity can only be translated into reality in a world of democracy where people can share in political decisions and participate and cooperate within and among their social groups. And we know that such a democratic and humane life is first and foremost lived in towns and communities, where it is realized in its purest form. In our own conviction, respect for human dignity cannot be separated from the freedom of mankind and a fair chance for self-realization. We are aware of the fact that there are different social systems in East and West, in North and South. We wish and strive for a cooperation on the basis of partnership between the richer and the poorer members of the international community, and we have acted accordingly. However, we believe that in the field of human settlements, possibilities and opportunities to improve the living conditions of men in the various countries of this globe, these possibilities lie first and foremost, but not exclusively, within the individual countries themselves. It is only on this basis that cooperation and international assistance will be successful. I hope and expect that this conference will open up new areas in the field of human settlements. I am sure that we shall find, step by step, realistic and practical solutions within the framework of the United Nations. Mr. President, according to the experience of my country, there's a very close and often mutual contact between the extension and securing of a social and local infrastructure and the economic development of a country. After its foundation, the Federal Republic of Germany saw itself confronted with problems which are not really comparable to those of many nations of today. However, these problems meant for us at that time specific and difficult tasks in all areas of public, social and economic life. 1/3 of our housing stock was destroyed, as well as wide areas of the infrastructure, and large parts of the industrial potential could no longer be employed. In this situation, we had to find additional shelter for 15 million people. We had to provide them with food and work. This was a long and difficult task. A task which we mastered, based on international cooperation and a clear decision for a policy of peace and in seeking reconciliation with all nations. Many of the problems of those times could be solved, and it is the fruitful experience throughout Habitat that we have all reflected on the value of our solutions and that we have become aware of the fact that so much still remains to be done, and this applies also to my own country. If we make an international comparison, we can say that there's a good balance in our country between regional and settlement structures. However, we have to strive to ensure that a balance between urban and non-urban areas and their natural environment is maintained. We must secure the equal living conditions throughout the country, and we must improve them without retarding the generative forces of a free society. In our country, there's a fair balance between housing units and households and a good infrastructure. But there are still considerable sectoral and social disparities which we have to overcome. This will be one of the key tasks of human settlements politics in the years ahead. The main reasons for what we believe to be a favorable development in my country are the following. Our fundamental decision for a free, socially orientated economic order. Decentralization in 3 levels for the fulfillment of all major tasks, that is to say central, regional and local level, and at the same time a decentralization of political responsibilities. A very close cooperation which has been going on for 30 years between all groups of society. Our social security system has proven to be a great success and a factor of stability. In such important fields as law, administration and education, we were able to rely on already existing structures and institutions, which we had to adapt over the years to the changing social and economic conditions. Others had to be created anew. Moreover, a policy of formation of property for large parts of the population, bound at the same time into the framework of social obligations to the community stemming from this property. We have chosen an economic and social order which rejects any form of centralized administration. On the basis of this conviction, we have firmly developed social housing as an instrument for social policy and the formation of property. On the basis of this conviction, we have strengthened local responsibility through financial assistance by the federal government to reconstruct and renew our towns and cities. We have created legislation for land use, building and urban development, which increases the participation of the individual citizen in decisions taken at the local level. In our audiovisual contributions, we try to illustrate how such a policy is functioning at the local level. We have chosen this level because, in referring to the institutional aspects, it were the local authorities in the Federal Republic of Germany which bore the brunt of village and urban reconstruction. They are the backbone of regional and settlement development. Mr. President, we are striving for progress of habitat and a closer cooperation of all nations in this field. The documents presented to this conference are an important basis. In particular, I agree with the conclusion that national activities are most important in the sphere of human settlements. It is in this field where their needs lie, which we have to come up to. When thinking of the organizational consequences, we should try to get the optimum of institutional reorganization with a minimum modification of existing structures. My government is willing to play a constructive part in this process of reorganization, not only during this conference, but also in future. When looking at the proposed activities, we should try and learn from the experience gained in other fields of the United Nations. We should learn how useful it is to develop practical and realistic proposals within the framework of available means. This implies also that we have to set up an organization which is to be built around existing units with the competence and staff to function properly, and which is keeping close contact with all important United Nations agencies. I hope that we shall succeed in our discussions to select from the large number of activities proposed in the documents before us those which are particularly urgent in the near future. If we do this, I am sure that this conference will come to a satisfactory result for all nations of the international community. My delegation has come to Vancouver to play a constructive part. The responsibility for the future of the family of nations, the responsibility for the future of mankind, call for answers to the problems and questions dealt with here in this conference. Questions which are urgent and pending. Time is running out. But I believe, since all delegations are inspired by a firm will to act, that we do have a chance to come to solutions. Mr. President, thank you.
I thank the Federal Minister of Regional Planning, Building and Urban Development of the Federal Republic of Germany. I now give the floor to the Chairman of the Pontifical Committee for the Family of the Holy See, His Excellency Monsignor Edouard Gagnon.
In the name of the delegation of the Holy See, our warm congratulations on your election as president of this conference. I am confident that your competency and experience will guide the work of this conference to a happy and successful conclusion. Quisiera también expresar mis más sinceras felicitaciones al señor secretario general, Dr. Peñalosa, cuya alta competencia y grande sabiduría han asegurado a esta conferencia la mejor preparación. Es por haberse interesado de cerca a tan esmera preparación que el Santo Padre, Papa Paulo VI, me ha encargado de comunicar a esta distinguida asamblea un mensaje especial. Message
from His Holiness Pope Paul VI. Mr. President, we are happy to address our greeting to you today and to express to the United Nations Conference on Human Settlements our profound satisfaction at seeing, as the preparation and organization of your labors prove, that the international community is acquiring an ever greater consciousness of the importance of the questions submitted to your study. Periodically, the drama of earthquakes recalls to public opinion the place which a dwelling occupies in the life and in the hearts of people. You know that individuals, groups, entire sectors of people live permanently, either always or under the pressures of social changes, in the situation of those whom nature suddenly deprives of their home and their living environment. The preparatory works of this conference tell us that it is no longer possible to ignore such a situation or to grow accustomed to it or to tolerate it. Nor has your conference assembled in order to deplore with resignation the enormous and growing deficiencies in the matter of the habitat, but to reanimate and sustain the courage of builders and to seek original and magnanimous solutions to the most urgent problems, so that each person can have, together with a worthy and attractive dwelling, the normal services of health, hygiene, and communication within a framework of life that permits his or her full physical and spiritual progress. In this message, it is not for us to suggest technical solutions, but we wish, before all else, to reiterate to you our confidence in the person and in his capacity to enlarge ceaselessly the area of what is possible if his intelligence and heart are committed to a truly human existence for all his brothers and sisters. And we also would like to recall certain essential principles which can inspire and stimulate the reflection of this conference and the competent work of those who will be subsequently called upon to put these programs into practice. Human beings constitute the most important element in the universe. We rejoice to see this affirmation heading the general principles which guide your labors. In effect, the center and fundamental priority of all programs must be the person in all his dimensions and all his dignity, the individual and social being, natural and historical, corporal and spiritual. Habitat must promote the development of his entire character and all the wealth of the human nature. But all persons share in the same dignity. All life bears in itself an intrinsic quality, and this demands that conditions for fully human progress should be ensured for all people in their habitat. The home, that is to say, the center of warmth in which the family is united and the children grow in love, must remain the first concern of every program relative to the human environment. But this presupposes that the family and all its members are helped to be educated about the meaning and value of life, about the means of reaching true happiness. How many parents shower their children with secondary and passing things, but take little interest in giving them in the home a little space and peace for their balance and development. How many parents do not know how to arouse in their children an interest in the running and embellishment of their home, and do not prepare them to collaborate tomorrow in the perfecting of the human environment. It also seems important to us that the conference, while noting the primary role of technicians and creative geniuses with an enlightened social sense, should show a great confidence in the active and constructive participation of peoples, that it should mobilize the material and moral energies of all, even the apparently most humble, in the framework of programs proportioned to their real possibilities, their legitimate aspirations, and their particular cultural conditions. We have already, on several occasions, manifested our conviction that international organizations are necessary in order to specify the exigencies of justice between peoples and to render effective the good resolutions of solidarity among individuals. The present conference fulfills this role by making once more possible the affirmation by all the nations of a clear political will and a serious spirit of collaboration, by enabling international cooperation to be expressed in bold, realistic, and precise programs, by assuring that these programs will be taken up and sustained by the decisions of the United Nations, and that they will be integrated as an essential element into this new international economic order that has to be ceaselessly built up. Finally, it seems to us important for a conference like yours to form for itself a complete vision of reality by looking at the past, the present, and the future. The past, in order to take note of the valid and diverse experiences left to us by the tradition of peoples. For even in accepting lights coming from outside, each people has always had a special insight in order to solve the problems proper to it. The present, in order to appreciate the gravity of the present phenomena regarding the habitat, but by going beyond immediate appearances and seeking the real causes, moral or physical, of the present ills. It is at this price that fresh errors of orientation will be avoided. The future, in order to challenge people's imaginations and to call forth